Today, we're jumping into a really cool story. It's about speed, it's about AI, and honestly, it's about empathy. We're going to see how a production-ready, neuro-inclusive iOS app got built from the ground up in just 4 hours. I mean, think about that for a second. It sounds a little crazy, right? Building a whole app with AI in just one go. But that question, that ambition, well, that was the entire driving force behind this project. And we're about to find out exactly how they pulled it off. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the challenge itself. Then, we'll dive into the build process and the AI magic. After that, we'll explore the really important design philosophy behind it all. And finally, we'll get into the real-world hiccups and the lessons learned along the way. All right, let's get into it. The mission was straightforward but intense. Take a bunch of code files and, in a single 4-hour session, transform them into a polished, fully functional iOS app that's ready to ship. No small feat. So the core idea was pretty simple, but really powerful. It was a task manager that put voice input first and foremost. Now, this wasn't just for convenience. It was specifically designed to lower the mental barrier for anyone who finds typing, organizing, and just managing tasks to be a real struggle. And the most important part? Accessibility wasn't some add-on feature. Nope, it was the foundation for the entire thing. You know, you don't pull off a 4-hour build with chaos. You do it with a plan. A really detailed 8-phase battle plan, to be exact. This structured approach was absolutely key. It broke the whole project down into these manageable chunks, from getting the initial code working, to adding features, weaving in Apple's on-device AI, and even setting aside dedicated time for accessibility and testing. It just goes to show you, when you're under pressure, a clear roadmap is everything. Okay, now for the fun part. How did this thing actually get built? This is where the code really meets the concept, and we're going to spotlight the key tech that made this lightning-fast build even possible. The tech stack here is basically a highlight reel of modern iOS development. You've got Swift UI for building the interface, Swift Data for handling all the data storage right there on the device, and EventKit for hooking into Apple's own Reminders app. But the real star of the show, that was Foundation Models, which is Apple's framework for on-device AI. And this is where the magic happens. Instead of making you cap through a bunch of forms, the app just understands you. A user can say something like, "Urgent meeting tomorrow," and bam, the AI instantly figures out that's a task with a title, a high priority, and a due date. It's a total game changer for making things easier and reducing that mental friction. So we've seen the how, but honestly, the why is what makes this project so special. This was never just about building an app fast. It was about building a better, more human app. Accessibility wasn't a checkbox. It was the core architecture. The guiding principle here is something called Neuro-Inclusive Design. And all that means is deliberately creating an experience that works for people with different ways of thinking, especially folks with ADHD or dyslexia. The goal is always to reduce the mental effort required and just make everything as clear and intuitive as possible. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, for users with ADHD, it meant creating a calm design. Think quick, purposeful animations, none of those distracting, bouncy effects. For users with dyslexia, the focus was all on typography, special fonts, more spacing, and only left-aligned text to make reading as stable as possible. Let's just zoom in on that typography for a second. Fonts designed for dyslexia, like OpenDyslexic, are not just a style choice. They have these really specific features, like making the bottoms of letters heavier, which actually helps the brain tell the difference between similar shapes, like a B and a D. You combine that with more space between letters and lines, and you're actively fighting what's known as visual crowding, which can make reading really tough. Okay, now for the last section. This is where the perfect plan slams right into the messy reality of code. And honestly, this is usually where the best lessons are learned. Because it doesn't matter how good your plan is. Technology, well, it will always find a way to surprise you. And during the testing phase, things started to go sideways. This quote from the developer's log just captures the chaos perfectly. When they tried to run automated tests, the system just started making endless copies of the iPhone simulator, like it was building an army. They would all crash before a single test could even run. It was this bizarre, frustrating roadblock that just stopped everything cold. But hey, every problem has a solution. The developer just had to pivot. So when the fancy on-device AI wasn't available, the app would just fall back to a simpler method. When a complex database query wasn't working, the workaround was to just grab all the data and filter it manually. These little gotchas are a great reminder that good development is really just creative problem solving. So after battling simulator armies and buggy code, what was the final result? 12 out of 12 unit tests passed. That number means it was a total success. A stable, reliable, and fully tested application, all built against the clock. So, what can we all learn from this wild 4-hour ride? First, a solid plan is your best friend when things get crazy. Second, build and test constantly. It helps you find problems before they become disasters. Third, always have a backup plan for when new tech doesn't behave. And finally, and this is the most important one, build accessibility into the very bones of your project. It is not just another feature, it is a core philosophy. And that really leaves us with one big question to think about. This whole project proves that with the right tools, a clear plan, and a focus on empathy, you can create technology that feels more human in a shockingly short amount of time. It really makes you wonder, if this is what's possible in just 4 hours, what could we accomplish if we applied these same principles everywhere?